The ballroom of the Montclair Grand Hotel glittered like a polished lie. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across marble floors. Champagne flowed without pause, and everyone smiled as if happiness were part of the dress code. I stood near the edge of the room, fingers tightening around a borrowed glass, watching my wife become someone else. Nora looked radiant tonight. She always did when there were witnesses. Her black silk gown clung to her body like it belonged there, more than I did. She laughed softly, tilting her head just enough to invite attention, her hand resting on the arm of a man she'd met less than 10 minutes ago. His name, I'd learned, was Victor Hale. He was tall, confident, expensive, the kind of man who didn't ask permission to exist. I was invisible beside them. My phone vibrated once in my pocket. I ignored it at first. Then it vibrated again. A private transfer notification. An amount so large my brain refused to register it immediately. I excused myself from the cluster of donors and executives, stepped into the shadow near the terrace doors, and finally looked. Funds received, the film rights, all of them. Sold. Just like that, my life had split cleanly in two. Behind me, Nora laughed again. Louder this time. Earlier, she'd insisted I rent a tuxedo. "You can't embarrass me tonight, Daniel," she'd said, adjusting my bow tie with sharp fingers. "Just stand straight. Try not to look bored." She said it like a warning. Now she was standing inches from Victor, her body angled away from me, her eyes bright and hungry. She hadn't introduced me. Not properly. I was just there. Victor finally noticed me and smiled with professional politeness. "And you are?" he asked. "Daniel," I said, extending my hand. He barely touched it. "Ah, the husband." Nora laughed. "Daniel paints," she said lightly, as if apologizing for a stain. "Very expressive." Victor nodded. "Tough market for that sort of thing," he said. "Starving artist, huh?" Nora didn't correct him. Something cracked quietly in my chest. I slipped outside onto the terrace, the city wind cutting through my rented tux. Below, traffic pulsed like a living thing. I pressed my palms to the railing and exhaled. I wasn't her husband anymore. Not really. That night, back in the apartment, I brewed coffee while Nora showered. Her tablet lay on the counter, screen lighting up with a message preview. "Victor, can't stop thinking about tonight. About you. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to." Later, long after she thought I was asleep, I heard her voice from the living room. Soft. Intimate. "I'll leave him once the promotion is final," she whispered. "He's kind, but kindness isn't enough." She laughed quietly. Daniel would never fight back. She was right about that. The next morning, she rushed out with a distracted kiss and a list of errands. I sat alone at the kitchen table, sunlight cutting across the floor like a blade, and called my attorney. Arthur didn't ask questions. He prepared the documents by noon. By evening, I packed one bag, just my passport, one hard drive, nothing else. I left the ring on the nightstand, the papers beside it. No accusations, no names. When I closed the door, it didn't make a sound. She came home later than usual. I know this because the doorman texted me out of habit. Old routines die slowly. By then I was already halfway across the city, sitting in the back seat of a black sedan, watching familiar streets slide past as if they belonged to someone else now. Nora discovered the silence first. The apartment had a particular sound when it was empty, a hollow stillness, like a breath being held. She called my name once, sharply, already irritated. Then again, louder. No answer. Keys. Ring. Envelope. She sat at the kitchen island, and tore the envelope open with shaking fingers. I imagined her face as she read, the defensive anger, the instinctive outrage. How dare he? How could he? This must be a mistake. She called Victor before she called me. I did it, she said, voice brittle. He left. Victor moved in 2 days later. That was the first crack in the fantasy. Victor didn't replace me. He consumed space where I'd once been. He left dishes in the sink. He complained about the internet speed. He drank the expensive wine without noticing. He never fixed anything. And when the rent notification arrived, Nora froze. She stared at the number for a long time, then opened the joint account. The balance was dangerously low. I thought you paid this, she said to Victor. He laughed. Why would I? It's your place. It's not. She stopped, realized, swallowed. That was when she understood that kindness had been paying half her life. Victor stayed anyway. He always stayed when things got uncomfortable, just long enough to drain what was left. I didn't see any of this. I was learning how silence feels when it's peaceful. The estate I bought sat far beyond the city, wrapped in trees and distance. The money from Silent Echo had arrived in waves, each one erasing another old fear. I woke without alarms, ate without guilt, slept without bracing for disappointment. For the first time, I felt proportional, like my life finally fit me. My agent Claire called one afternoon with a tremor in her voice. They want the interview live, she said. Prime time Sunday night. I agreed on one condition. No mask, no delays, no edits. Back in the city, in a cramped office that smelled of burnt coffee and panic, Nora stood by a rain-streaked window, adjusting the belt of her skirt. The agency was failing. Clients were leaving. Bills stacked faster than excuses. Victor paced behind her. This Elias Thorne thing, he said. It's a gamble. He's not a gamble, Nora replied sharply. He's a phenomenon. He's a recluse who hates media. All the more reason, she said. He needs us. What she didn't say was that she needed him more. She watched the countdown clock that evening like it might save her. When the host introduced Elias Thorne, 50 million copies sold, translated into 40 languages, Nora leaned forward, breath held, heart racing with anticipation. Then the camera cut. And there I was. Not Elias Thorne, Daniel Gray. Her world collapsed in absolute silence. For a moment, no one spoke. Not in the studio, not in Nora's office, not even inside my own chest. The host recovered first. Professionals always do. Daniel Gray, she said carefully, eyes flicking toward her cue cards. Writing under the name Elias Thorne. I nodded once. I preferred anonymity, I said. I didn't want the noise. I wanted the work to stand on its own. The lights were warm. Too warm. I felt exposed and oddly free at the same time. The host leaned in. And now? I exhaled slowly. Now I'm tired of hiding. Somewhere across the city, Nora's knees gave out. Victor swore under his breath. They argued in whispers while my face filled the screen. How could you not know? Victor snapped. You lived with him. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Every memory rearranged itself at once. The late nights, the quiet typing, the calm, the money that appeared without explanation. The host asked about my marriage. I was married to someone who didn't respect me, I said evenly. And I let that happen. The words landed cleanly. No bitterness, just truth. Victor laughed harshly. You called him nothing. Nora's mouth opened, closed. She saw it then, the magnitude of her mistake. Not just losing me, losing what I was becoming. The interview ended with applause. I removed the alias with a simple sentence. I won't be Elias Thorne anymore, I said. I'm done wearing masks. The next morning, the city woke up to headlines. She found me weeks later in a bookstore on Broadway, standing behind a table stacked with my name. She clutched a copy of the book like a life raft. When it was her turn, I looked up and recognized her instantly. "Nora," I said, politely. She told me she'd lost everything. Victor, the agency, the apartment. She lived in a studio now, far from everything she'd once claimed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know," I said. She reached for me. Security stepped in. I smiled, professional, distant. "Next," I said. She opened the book outside. To Nora. "Wishing you luck. Elias Thorne." The city swallowed her sobs. She stood there, long after the line dissolved. People passed her without noticing. Broadway never pauses for grief. The neon lights flickered on, taxis screamed past, laughter spilled out of bars, and Nora remained frozen on the sidewalk, like a discarded prop from someone else's story. The book trembled in her hands. She opened it again, slower this time, as if hoping the words might rearrange themselves if she looked carefully enough. They didn't. No declaration. No secret message. No acknowledgement of a shared past. Just her name and a polite wish. A stranger's signature. For the first time, it wasn't anger that rose in her chest. It was weight. The weight of every moment she had dismissed. Every time she'd rolled her eyes when I spoke about my work. Every dinner interrupted by her phone lighting up with someone more important. Every joke made at my expense in front of people who mattered to her. She hadn't lost a husband. She had discarded a future she never bothered to understand. She walked home through the rain. No umbrella. No destination that felt like home anymore. The studio apartment smelled faintly of damp carpet and reheated food. She dropped the book on the small table and sank onto the edge of the bed. Her phone buzzed once. A news alert. Daniel Gray signs multi-picture deal. Net worth undisclosed. She stared at the screen until it went dark. Something inside her gave way. I never heard about the collapse from her. I heard it from a mutual acquaintance weeks later, a passing comment at a charity dinner. "She fainted," the woman said. "Right there in the subway." Exhaustion, they said. Stress. I nodded politely and changed the subject. Because by then, Nora existed to me the way an old apartment does, a place you once lived but no longer visit. Familiar in outline, empty of meaning. My life filled quickly. Interviews turned into invitations. Invitations turned into opportunities. My books were translated into languages I couldn't read. Film sets rose from words I'd written alone at night while someone slept beside me, bored and unimpressed. I bought a house overlooking water. Not because it was impressive, because it was quiet. Sometimes in the early mornings, I walked the length of the dock with a cup of coffee and thought about how close I'd come to disappearing inside someone else's expectations. How easily I'd allowed love to shrink me. Fame didn't heal me. Distance did. Time did. And the brutal clarity of knowing that success never changes who someone is. It only reveals what they were always capable of seeing. I never reached out to Nora again. She sent one email months later, long, apologetic, full of insight that arrived too late to matter. I didn't reply, not out of cruelty, out of mercy, for both of us. Because the truth that destroyed her wasn't my success. It was the realization that she had stood next to something rare and treated it as disposable. I learned something important in the aftermath. Love isn't proven by proximity. It's proven by respect. And anyone who needs you to stay small so they can feel tall was never meant to stand beside you when the lights finally turn on. I stepped into the world as myself. She remained behind, surrounded by echoes. And for the first time in my life, I didn't look back.